Don't need me.
Yeah. It's all great, yeah, but it was really nice just a second ago. It's raining.
That's right.
More than Dennis anyway.
And I can be bossy. I can be bossy.
She needs bossy. Because she didn't say to be bossy.
No, never.
Thank you for coming. I know it means a lot to you.
Sporting a beer. No, I know who it is.
You know what it's mate? Well, look, my grandfather said never trust a man with beer. So do you think it? I don't know. What do you trust?
I do, and I do the text on Facebook. It always comes down.
I like psychology. Like, I don't know, it covers so much. It's so broad, which is why
Mum's thrilled to hear you were coming. She was thrilled. She thinks the world of you.
the bins in the big bin. Yeah.
They had a likely
Just tell me. You're welcome. You're welcome. We love that. Of course. I could, but I chose to. You know, like I could see that there was just the way she one of those things. I knew she was there. I'd seen the name on the attendance
very stylish.
I didn't see you last time I came in to pick up my paper.
The way you
On behalf of the Atkins family, I welcome you here today to remember, honour and share memories of that wonderful human being, John Alexander Atkins. My name is Norman Weedall. I've been a family friend since the late 70s when Paul and Matt were little tackers. I remember them running around the lab playing trains made from cardboard boxes and tape in what was truly a family atmosphere. I see lots of faces from people who've worked for Atkins over the years. You'll understand what that means. Thank you for giving up your valuable time to be here today. We're all busy people, but you made it a priority to be here because John Atkins affected you and your lives in some way. He certainly affected mine. He changed my life. Marilyn's wish is that we share our own happy memories of the time we spent with John and make this a celebration of his life. So even though this introduction is fairly formal, as you can see, we're going to lighten it up after I move away. Marilyn decided not to attend today. She lives in Cairns, and John and her lived up there for 3 years, so she feels more comfortable up there. And DJ's doing a recording, so she'll see the video and see all your handsome faces. I'm sure John would be delighted to see that such a sad event as his passing has created a wonderful opportunity for all you people to catch up with old friends. And I can see him smiling at this now, saying, "Oh, God, I haven't seen that guy for years." So I'm just going to pass over to Paul now, who's going to have a little chat and make it a bit lighter.
Oh, yeah?
Chat about his dad and show some pictures. And so after that, William's going to speak, and then I'll speak again, and then we'll invite people who'd like to say a few words about their connection to John. And then we'll get the food after that. Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks, Norman. Now I'm going to turn the technology on, and the technology is going to work. Hey. And I'm going to press that. I'm going to do that. Oh golly gosh. Hello everybody. Welcome, thank you so much for coming today. This is a celebration of Dad's life. Like in everyone's lives, there's ups and downs. So Norm said it's going to be light and fluffy. I don't think I can do that, but it's also not going to be morose and miserable. Thank you for everyone who's come. There's people who've come from a very long way to be here. Thank you so much, interstate travellers. Thank you for those that are infirm and uncomfortable walking, and you've all made it here, and we've navigated the fantastic renovations here, and we've all got in one place, which is fantastic. Thank you. I want to thank my brother and sister-in-law Matthew and Tessa for helping put this together. They've done an absolutely stellar job of supporting everything. I want to thank my beautiful Kate, Elizabeth and Josephine for helping me throughout this. You and the team at the lab, and I can see there's a few people here, have really kept everything humming while I've been useless. Like, I can tell you how bad and useless I can be at times, and I'm at the worst of it right now. So they're actually running the place better than I could ever have, even if I was in one piece. So we've learned something with this. Paul, go and do something else perhaps. I want to thank Norm Weedall for emceeing the event. It was great having a wrangler. We're very grateful for him to be here. Thanks DJ for recording this, and I want to thank Mum. I thought, like all my optimism, I thought she'd be here, but she told me last week that she couldn't do it. And I get it totally. She's got a beautiful little apartment. She's got Dad in a little post-pack tube, which I was laughing at, but it's a little cardboard tube. She's thrilled to have him, and she's comfortable. She has a nice place in a nice, happy little environment. And then she's going to come down. We're going to see her again at some stage when she feels like travelling. She just needs the time by herself right now. So thank you for your understanding with that. She sends her love to everybody. Now I'm going to refer to WG and JA. Does everyone understand what that means? Yeah. Okay. If I translate, anyone who needs it, just ask the person next to you. John Alexander Atkins was born at Calvary Hospital, North Adelaide on the 19th of March 1944. Dad's proud parents were Emily Daisy and William George Atkins, hence the WG. John is brother to Roy, Janet and Daniel. And we've got Roy here at the back of the room, so if you want to have a hug of a real Atkins at that sort of thing, you can grab Roy. He'll be up for it. John had a free and adventurous childhood. Here he is, he's on the left, and Roy is on the far right with two other local friends, and they had a little game going. I think they're at Somerton Park in the sand dunes having a great time. I don't know who the randoms are. They're probably in this room perhaps, but I won't, excuse me. Only so much metadata got put on photos back then. There were some people and pets everywhere at the Somerton Park home. So there's Roy and Dad with the dogs, and then the little pony was Midget, which is Dad's horse. And if I just pop to the next slide, there's pictures of parties and Christmases, and there's a whole team on Midget, the poor horse. And I'm not sure, they used to love riding with the Butterworth brothers. Now I know Miriam's here somewhere. Hello Miriam, Wayne and Ian. Dad loved riding with them, childhood friends, and Susie's here with her mum too. Thanks for coming. And so that's Dad on the second one back, and that's Janet on the neck. So that's his sister on the neck of the horse. On this, I think the picture of the Christmas picture, that's Dad hiding behind the carousel on the right-hand side. So they had a pretty fun childhood. That's what I'm trying to paint. Dad was super cute, but he was one of the 800 patients admitted to Northfield Infectious Disease Hospital with polio in the outbreak of around 1950. He was in hospital for a fairly long stay, but having contracted it later in the outbreak, when treatment was understood better, they got him out of bed, up and walking, which meant his time suffering was very limited. But that's something he very rarely spoke about, and when you think about his leukemia at the end, perhaps where did this all begin? And polio is a pretty vicious thing, and it ripped through the community, and we're very lucky that the government sorted out vaccines, and people now don't have to deal with polio. I believe, didn't I read somewhere there's an outbreak? Something crazy? So yay, go science. Here's a couple of lovely pictures. One of the family going to a costume party, that's on the left. You can see WG and M sitting in the back, Roy standing up, and Janet in the middle, and of course not Danny yet, or maybe Danny was born but was too little to be in a costume. The one on the right is Roy, Dad at the back looking down at Danny, Janet, and of course the wonderful little Danny brought fresh from hospital. And I asked Uncle Roy about growing up with Dad, and he had lots of memories of adventures together, but he did confess we did dreadful things to Janet. And he said, I said, give us one example that I can tell the audience. He said, we made her talk to horses. I said, okay, she's a little girl, I can get that, but what did you do? She said, well, we learnt one of her secrets. We sneakily worked it out. Then we told her we knew what the secret was and told her the secret. And she said, oh, how did you find out? And Roy said, oh, my horse told me. So that was it from then on. Janet was like up there yakking away with the horses. And I don't know whether it's still going to this day, but she's not here to tell us. I thought I'd include this 30-second film of life in an Atkins backyard. So this is just a little quick splash of what it was like. That's WG on the bicycle with his umbrella. I don't know what was going on. There's Dad in the red jumper, the other red jumper. There he is. There's John Atkins. And the poor cat, sorry everybody. Dad saving the cat. Danny turned into a vet because of this, I'm quite convinced. WG trying to get whatever standing upright. And then Roy kicking WG. And this is Heather Donaldson, for those of you who remember Heather. There she is jumping in there. So this was, I'm thinking 1953, 54, 55, something like that. So yeah, interesting. In 58, when Dad was 14, he went to work with his dad. This picture and newspaper clipping shows what a 14-year-old working JA looked like. He just found a wallet with over 100 pounds in it and dutifully handed it in. He was rewarded with £5 for his honesty, and he made it in the paper. So, I don't know, I think that is a big shining moment for my dad and what I thought of him, and what I thought of person he was. And I'm not sure of the relationship with Dad and WG, but this little story might help. Dad said he wanted to build a boat, a big cabin cruiser. WG said you could never do that. So then he thought about it, he thought, well, if you do it, I'll buy you the motor. And so Dad always told the story emphasising that WG didn't believe he could build the boat. Now, it sounds unkind, he could be pushing him, who knows what it is, but in the end, that's the boat. The fabulous boat. There is the family enjoying it on the Paddle-a-Lunga. And just so you can see how old Dad is, I've got an inset picture with him poking out the hatch at the front. So he was a little 16-year-old. He's a tiny little boy. Working with WG, Dad photographed and filmed. This is just a list. Mum gave me this list, so forgive me for reading this out. Horse racing, trotting, greyhounds in the city and the country. He started motion picture film patrol at the races to aid the stewards in supervising these races. He partly designed and set up a photo finish system to aid the judges in deciding race finishes. He filmed basketball, cycling, greyhound coursing. He photographed yearlings for the Coles Brothers and the Blood Horse Breeders Association. That's the one-year-old horses that they make a catalogue to sell the horses at the auction. So he photographed those, and which I actually started working with him doing that too. He was flown to film the Melbourne Cup for television news. He photographed Sabrina, an English glamour model, the American Mouseketeer James Dodd. He was a fan of Annette Funicello, as most men of that age were. Will, am I right?
You're right.
Everyone loved Annette. So he got the Mouseketeer James Dodd, so, you know, by association, they may have been on a date, who knows. He photographed Queen Elizabeth, the Duke of Edinburgh, the Queen Mother, all the governors and parliamentarians of his era in South Australia. He photographed the Kidman family. He photographed Anne Kidman's wedding. He photographed the Lindsay Park and the Hayes family. He was the official photographer for ANZAC for many years. And this photograph of him holding, you can see he's got a strange speaker in his hands. So he and my grandfather sort of innovated an idea to get a horse looking good in front of a camera. You play the neigh, the horse would and the other horse would go, oh. And then he would take a picture. So that's, I think that was from a press clipping, frankly, but there's WG and Dad. So that's enough of the career. We'll come back to all of that. More importantly, of all that career stuff is where he met my mum, Marilyn Hodson. And there was nothing stopping this romance. Is that not the coolest couple you've ever seen? It is just, it's so gorgeous. That picture means so much to me. John and Marilyn were married at St John's Church in Adelaide in June '66. Their wedding night was at the Hotel Australia, later the Hotel Oberoi in Adelaide. Now you can see the spires of the cathedral in the background. Who has a wedding night morning photograph in the 60s? Now I hope that's all the photos we ever find of a wedding night. But that is just the most beautiful picture of a young couple. It's just gorgeous. And they honeymooned on the Gold Coast. And I was just going to ask Will, that's the sort of work you did?
Exactly.
There's no chance that you wouldn't remember any of it, wouldn't matter.
Well, if it wasn't me, it was possibly Karen, because she used to shoot on the cruises.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
How wonderful. So there they are, the Shangri-La cruise.
Yep.
honeymoon on the Gold Coast. Now, my feeling is one of their loves is that tropical lifestyle. I don't know where they got it from or what it was, but Mum being in Cairns is kind of a nice echo of where they wanted to be. You know, living the tropical life which you guys live all the time, don't you? Except when it's flooding. As things happens, 4 years later I was born, and 18 months later my little brother Matthew joined us. So there's my little skinny leg dad, I've got his legs. But we're both very cute. We got christened and all that sort of stuff. Matt's in the dress there, sorry Matthew. Friends and family are always a big part of our growing up. So sorry, I'll go back for that one. This is family. So you can see on the left there's a lady in pink. That's Auntie Florrie and Uncle John, which is my grandfather WG's brother. And then the rest of them are my cousins. There's quite a lot of them in this room today, so you can play spot the cousin if you really want to go back to this. And I'm in these embarrassing outfits in the front. I don't know what that's all about. It's Mum's fault, no doubt. We had some great holidays. Dad was always down on the fun. He loved it. He was great at separating work from play, and he took both incredibly seriously, as anyone who's worked with him knows. Over the years we holidayed with friends. Here we are with the Herucs, who are here, and the Nutters in Queensland with their children. Little Kate Nutter in the front there looking super cute. You were here in the room, I gave you a hug earlier. So yes, everyone's growing up, and we had these great adventures together. Here's a picture of out to dinner with Alex and Di and Libby and Sam Savis out for dinner. Now Libby and Sam worked for Westpac at the time and were very close to Mum and Dad and were super helpful with them through all of their time there and being friends. I don't know if Libby and Sam are here today. They may have been coming, but at any rate. And on the right, there's with Peter and Tracy at the Mount Gambier Cup, which was a regular fixture in their life that they just treasured. So they drive down in the car together, drink the whole way down, I think. You didn't drink drive or anything, Pete? No? Good. Just checking in case there's any coppers in the room. They go to the races, have a bit of fun, and then head on back. Here's a wonderful picture of Dad with childhood friend Wayne. I know we talked about Wayne in these last few weeks. Dad really loved Wayne, and he was very grateful to have him as a friend. And on the right there's Dad as the Phantom with Alex. I don't know, Alex clearly got the message it was fancy dress, but he never went as hard as Dad did. Any opportunity Dad got to dress as a Phantom, he got in the Phantom outfit. And I don't know if he owned it, I haven't found it. Maybe he actually was the Phantom. We're not sure. But very few of us ever got to the same level of fancy dress and energy that Dad put into it. He's always been very close to his siblings. They've had a great group call every Sunday night for quite a while, and here they are united in love for their father, WG. Just at a barbecue in the backyard, all threatening to stab him with steak knives, which, you know, probably fair game given some of their childhood experiences. Dad got his pilot's licence in his 20s and maintained it for many years. In the photo on the left, Matthew and I were thrilled to be going flying. We even had new outfits made by Mum. She may have messed up the air and sea motif. She used to fly with Dad until Dad explained to her that air traffic control don't actually control the air. They just tell you that thing should be, keep your eye out. And Mum's like, right, we're landing now. And so that was the last time she went, probably the last time we went as well. The one on the right, Dad's got his wrist in a cast. That's entirely Matthew and my fault. We left the bike lying down in the shed and he fell over it and broke his wrist. But he still took us flying, if that's legal, I don't know. Professionally, Dad continued piloting. He flew for Darian Smith, who's an aerial photographer. I don't know why he ended up being the pilot for Darian for a while, and eventually as Darian's eyesight failed, Dad took over the photography and James Dodds started flying and actually doing the piloting for Dad. So he had an aerial photography career in the middle there. Now please indulge me these next two slides. Mum wanted me to include something about Matthew and I, and it's not about us, but she said, no, you've got to tell me. Tell them all about Matthew, picked up Dad's love of flying. As a licensed private pilot at 17, he finished school and went on to the Royal Military College, Duntroon, to graduate an officer. Matthew flew for both the Air Force and the Army, specialising in helicopters. And with time served on the twin-rotor Chinooks, he made a leap over to Qantas International and then Jetstar as a captain, where he still flies today. So if you want a free flight, hit him up. Matt, I think you managed to fly Mum and Dad once or twice. What was it?
Twice.
Twice. So you can imagine hearing the captain's name over the speed and finding out it's your kid and how you felt. It's pretty special. I was hooked on boating, and perhaps of the story of Dad building the boat. So he and I got to enjoy a lot of time on the water together. We even dragged him on a few longer trips that included Alex and Daniel Heruc, those poor people. And even some camping, which was not a natural place to find Dad, or I don't know if Alex was really into camping at the time. Daniel was into everything, so it wasn't really an issue for Daniel. And we're drinking there about 9 in the morning, which is wrong, Robert, I'm sorry. You should never be on a boat and drinking, but it was very, very cold. Very cold, and it was Lake Alexandrine in the morning, so, you know. Okay? And then Matt and I got married. Matt married Tess, I married Kate, and there were grandkids in order of age. I'm not going to make them come out here like the kids from the Bum Trap family. William, Elizabeth, Benjamin, Josephine, Nicholas, and Johnny. Tessa, did I get them all? Good. She's got the boys, I got the girls. That's how it's easily to work out the differences between us. My girls are here, and I think all the boys are here too. Here's Johnny. Looking $1 million, Johnny. And here they are with all the grandchildren at their 50th wedding anniversary in 2016. We had a stretch Hummer, and Mum and Dad drove us all around all their great haunts where they had the reception and where they honeymooned, and they didn't go to Brisbane, where they had the wedding night. Yeah, we had a great time doing that. It was a lot of fun. So I was lucky to share Dad's love of the lab business and photography. Working with your dad for more than 30 years is a very, very special thing. Special good, special difficult, special. It was wonderful. We both complement each other. I'd finished my Bachelor of Business and was deeply interested in the work. And what I wanted to do and what we did together was help bringing the industry and us as the lab through the introduction of digital print. And much like the work Dad did with colour, because he really started colour off in South Australia as a professional service, we were really rewarded by a close group of loyal clients, and we've treasured every one of them, and there's quite a few here today, and we're really grateful for everything you've given us over the years. Going back to the career of Dad, so this is where we talk a little about what he got up to. In the early 60s, Dad was encouraged to set up colour processing by his father, WG. So we're talking 61, 62. We think it was actually Emily who was behind the idea of getting onto it, because she used to have to hand colour all the pictures to make a colour picture. So she was, and we had a team of people doing it, but Emily was in charge of it. So she said, Bill, nudge, get him onto it. Dad went to Kodak. Paul Cullity, thank you for being here, from Kodak. He went to Kodak. Kodak taught him how to do colour. And then we started setting up, and the first colour print we made in the early 1960s was for John Haig of Haig's Chocolates. And we still have it hanging at the lab. It's not a good looking print, so I'm not showing it to many people, if you understand what fading looks like. And actually, before you go tonight, tonight, it's not going to be that long, I promise. But before you go, Dad asked well, he kind of did. We've got a box of chocolate frogs, and we should be able to, each one of you should be able to take one with you and stuff it in your gob. So don't leave without bailing me up with it, and we'll give you a chocolate frog. Because Haig's, and Dad and Haig's have had a long relationship based on chocolate for a very long time. So one of his first clients for colour processing was Darian Smith. And Darian was so well respected, it just bought all of the work in the lab, and that really was a big change for us. Everything we needed for professional colour lab was gathered at Perry Street, and a great team of technicians that brought the place to life. What really led to the success of the lab was Dad's ability to connect with customers and staff and not lose focus on the technical aspects. He really was a wonderful people person. We had so many fun and talented staff, and there's a bunch here today, so if you see someone looking lonely, give them a hug. They're one of our staff members probably missing us. Poor people, I'm glad they got out of here, don't blame them. I want a big thanks to Mark Dew as lab manager, because he really helped us through these crazy years. That's him in the middle, filling out an order sheet. Is Mark here? Yes.
Hey, thanks, Paul.
Hug coming up. Thank you, Mark. Because Dad needed more to do, he started Gainsborough Studios with Norman Weedall in 1980. I don't know, how do you get the energy for all this stuff? It's almost like Mark Z's opening a gallery up, running a successful photography business, and anyway, they saw a strong opportunity with Gainsborough in the portrait business, but the lab was all consuming, so within a few years, Dad had sold Gainsborough to Norman, where it continued to flourish and still flourishes today. With the help of Tony Reid, and thanks for being here, Yvette, it's lovely to see you. Tony's passed, unfortunately, we can't have his smiling face full of wonderful jokes doing a eulogy, but Dad and Tony were two peas in a pod. They shared the sense of humour, and that's Norman giving Tony a kiss in the right at the top of the centre there. And with Tony, we ran workshops, promotions, trade shows to try and help our customers improve their photography and glue themselves together so that they would be a group of friends. But Dad also supported organisations such as the Mrs. and Miss South Australia. That's Dad dressed as Mrs. South Australia on the left. Little Livers, the Cancer Foundation, Adelaide Convention and Tourism Authority, Rotary. He was a mad Rotarian. Classic Adelaide and Business SA. He really believed in associations. It was his jam. In 1990, Dad purchased Technicolor from the Marchant family and eventually merged the two labs. It was Atkins Technicolor at that stage. Racing was moved to Hutt Street in a building that Dad had purchased in the 80s, and we opened a colour copy centre in the same building. So that was a hell of a lot going on. In 1994, he sold the much-loved racing photography business to Hilary and Terry Han, who are here, lifelong friends of Mum and Dad, and we're so grateful for all your love and support over the years. Thank you. In 2007, he bought Duck Ponds and welcomed John Clark. And John's here too. Where are you, John? Thank you, John, and your wonderful team. Like, what a group of people. We were so lucky to have that. It just gave us another bit of icing on the old cake. It was fabulous. In 2019, Dad and Mum moved to far north Queensland, but we never stopped talking about the lab. He knew all about the latest from Kodak news and gossip. We talked weekly on it. We had discussed new machines, replacing machines, what's happening with the staff. He was eternally fascinated. And, when he actually passed, I was by his bed with Mum. I was working on a bloody spreadsheet for the business on my laptop, and I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Is that poetry or a problem if all you can do is work? But that was it, and we both love it, and I don't feel like it's work, but I was there. He looked across at me and he saw, and he smiled. We didn't smile, but he opened his eyes, he looked at Mum, and then that was it. So it was quite a beautiful thing. I've got some pictures here showing the wonderful people we've worked with. Some of you might recognise yourselves, and several who are still with us. I want to point out Mandy Bailey, he's in the room. Poor Miriam O'Brien gets time served. We love you, Miriam. Thank you for everything. And Karen Ladigas is here too. You guys are stuck, you poor things. More fun to come. And yeah, the room is full of people that have worked with us and businesses that have come from ours, and it's just been the most wonderful thing. And you can see in the middle there that We Love JA sign that was painted. I think that was Dad's 30th birthday or 40th. I can't remember, but that's on the Tivoli Hotel hanging across the road. So these are some recent photos. The most recent one here is the bottom right, which is at Kaz Tilbrock's farewell. Kaz, thank you for coming along. That was earlier this year. And Mandy Bailey is now a general manager. So that's our big change in our business for us, that we've actually got someone helping us out, stopping me from making dumb decisions. And so Kate and Mandy do a marvellous job of a lot of that stuff, and I think I'm just going to sit in the corner from now on. It's all good. So yes, Dad strongly believed in industry associations, whether it be AIPP, originally the IAP, or Portrait Maker. He believed they provided a bond that held the industry together, and I don't think a photographer would disagree with that. He was state president for the AIPP for 5 years, and he was a stalwart attendee at AIPP monthly breakfast. And sometimes it was just he and Mark and Melissa sitting there at breakfast, just the two or three of them. I think they just went for the Eggs Benedict, but any excuse for a catch-up. But that provided a heartbeat for the association here in South Australia and really kept it going. Dad's big love, though, was for the Photo Marketing Association. It was the international sharing of ideas that caught his attention and that we all benefited from. He travelled almost annually to the US trade shows and made many strong connections and lifelong friendships. Dad served as territorial vice president of that, which is basically the Australian president of the PMA, for several years. And that picture of he and I at the top on the right, we just spent a day writing postcards to all our clients. We thought it was a great idea. it was a really dumb idea because then we had to go to a post office and they wouldn't put the stamps on for us. And there was like 500 postcards. It was just, anyway. We tried these dumb things, and that's poor Ian Pill getting licked in the ear by Dad. For some reason that was a thing they did. Will, can you explain that?
No, but your father kept on doing it. That was actually in Sydney at the conference in Sydney.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we'll leave that alone.
Actually, I mentioned that to him before he passed.
Did you? Well, there's many. I think it might have been Ian as a target, perhaps, because there's other photos of Ian being really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, anyway. And Mark, of course, in the front, not joining in for some reason. I don't know what's there.
No, it left his other ear free.
In the early part of the 90s, due to some jousting with Westpac and the infamous recession, Mum and Dad found themselves having to sell a home and a few other places and move into the top floor of 89 Fullerton Road, which they did with grace and style. It was not an easy time. As a 20-year-old, I don't really remember too much, except not wanting to be around a lot. So I think they had a real hard time of it. And I think Dad's confidence was kind of knocked about by a lot. I think a lot of his friends might agree on that. It was definitely a big thing for him. We tried to see this as an adventure and it became a great home. Much of the work was done by Mum, Dad and Steve Miller. The lovely Steve Miller. This time with Steve making the home was one of their best and greatest joys. Best joy, is that a word? But it was one of his true happiness in life. One time Dad and Steve decided to unionise and start the JASMU to push back against Mum's ambitions. We think, I don't know, Steve could probably explain this better, but I think it was when Mum took a sledgehammer to a wall that they said they wouldn't knock out to get the deck, which you see Steve and John sitting on, cheersing a drink. Mum wanted a deck. They were like, we've just built everything for you, man, I'm sorry, I haven't got any more energy. They came back in the next day and she sledgehammered the wall out by herself and said, no, this is it now, we're having a deck. So I think that's when they unionised. Would that be?
We had to.
Okay, so tell me, is the union still operational or does it now go defunct for missing the JA part of it?
Yeah, it's lost its mentor, so yeah.
Oh, okay. There you go. Thank you for everything, Steve.
No worries, pleasure.
While Mum and Dad had been to the USA for the PMA and trade shows, they felt it was time to see more of the world, so they set off to fill their world map with pins, and they have a world map filled with pins. They loved ocean liners, and their cruises reached as far as north as Russia and as south as New Zealand. They did all the cruises you might expect them to do and loved every minute of it. They took friends and family, Missy Alex and Di in one of those pictures, and they took Emily, Dad's mum, and was Danny on that cruise? Danny and Sarah was on it? And Sarah was on it, yep. So they had a wonderful time with both friends and family on it. Here they are, I think again there's a QE2, or maybe that was a cruise when they were dressed in togas. That was your same cruise, wasn't it? No, that was a QE2 cruise. Yeah. You can see Mexico, you can see longboats. They went to the UK with Dad's sister Janet, who lives there, and did longboat trips. But the one destination, I was skipping ahead of myself, one destination that eluded them was Europe. They had never been, because the boat didn't go up far enough the Seine, I think, that was the story. And of course Mum was a mad Francophile, or is a mad Francophile, so, and it's a city of lights and city of romance, so Dad took her there. And that was 2015, and they had a great time. But Mum is also a Christmas nut, so they had to go up to Scandinavia and meet Father Christmas. Which just cracks me up because when my daughters all at Tessa's, every Christmas pageant, as soon as Santa's there, she is bawling. She's bawling. And Dad didn't want to tell her there was another Santa in the next hut. So it's just like, this is Santa. And for her, it doesn't really matter. They're all part of the same thing. So it's funny because that Santa didn't speak English, but they got on super well together. I don't know what they did. In 2019, Kate and I bought 89 Fullerton Road from Mum and Dad, and it was a very difficult process for everyone. And it meant Mum and Dad had to move. So they chose to go to tropical Queensland, a place where they've always loved, to try life out up there. Their plan was to rent for 6 months while they looked for a place to buy. Their first address was in Port Douglas, 107 St Crispin's Avenue, which is gorgeous. But a visit to the doctor messed with their plans. In mid-2020, Dad was diagnosed with myelodysplastic syndrome, a precursor to leukemia. Dad's diagnosing doctor, a celebrated haematologist, Dr. Shearer, asked that they stay in Cairns as his patient. So I don't understand how this works, but I gather if you get such a terrible, news like that, and then the guy, who's told you he can help you out says, stick with me, it's going to be okay. I think that's what you do, and that's what they did. The other thing is, you also gather a whole support health team around you when that happens. You need GPs, you need, all sorts of ologists. I can't even remember all their names. A very difficult time for Mum and Dad, but they built them around them, and then they were renting this wonderful little apartment, which I've got some photographs of, which Mum's still in Cairns Central Plaza, which is a hotel and apartment complex, sort of 50-50 split. The 4th floor, their transfusion centre this is not a nursing home, this is not a hospital, it's their apartment building. Medical centre on the 1st floor, GPs, dentists. Across the road is their great big shopping outlet. They can walk to the RSL, they can walk to the pub, restaurants all around them. So this was a little tiny town that had, a great feeling about it. For Dad, he felt comfortable for Mum because on the 2nd floor she could drive her car up and park it, get out and hop in the lift and go upstairs. So in many ways this was kind of a good thing, because I know a lot of us struggled. Why aren't you coming back to Adelaide for this fight? Why are you doing it so far away when you've got no support? And I know I felt that, and Norman felt it. But I think the decision was 100% right. COVID came through another spanner in the works, because what can you do with COVID? With someone with a low immune system, you can't go out, you can't travel. So visitors were difficult. So they pulled up the drawbridge and they made it their best, and they had a pretty nice time together. And then their hematologist died, Dr. Shearer, just to add another spinner to the work. The guy that said, I can give you 10 years, he then died. Joy to the world. Turns out he was a much loved and celebrated specialist in the area, and the whole city basically came out for his funeral. And of course, what else came out was all the other people that took his place, and Dr. Bavici stepped in and was absolutely incredible and helped out all the way through the end. They had so many visitors to Cairns. We want to thank, Mum told me this specifically, Janet, John, Helen, Jolene and Jenny and their family from the UK and Hong Kong. They came out. Helen actually came out a couple of times. Danny and Diane, Dad's brother and his partner, Matt and Tess and family, they were up so often, it was just wonderful. Dennis and Diana made the trip up, Sharon and Daniel did, Alex and Di, Norman and Anne made a couple of trips. And Peter and Rita and Marilyn and David, who are friends, drinking buddies from the Britannia Hotel, they made it up to visit them, which is just wonderful. Janet and her family sent this message from the UK. We struggled to find the right words to say. John was a wonderful big brother and uncle. We loved him so much, the countless memories of our times together. John was always kind, happy, funny, thoughtful, wise and generous. We'll miss him. Jan, John, Jenny and Helen. So you can see Janet on the top right, Danny's on the left, and Mum's brother, and with Mum bottom left, and then there's wonderful Helen, who lived with them for quite some time at Fullerton Road while she did her internship at the Women's and Children's Hospitals in Royal Adelaide. I can't remember. She's a paediatric orthopaedic surgeon. And so she just dragged them into all the parties and all the fun, and they had a great time with this young person living with them. Here's some pictures of Norman and Anne checking the botanic life out in the gardens, and Alex and I having dinner together. They made a great job of photographing everything and everyone, and they made sure they had their list so they knew who was there and what they were doing. And then Dad spent a lot of time organising his photos, so actually this was quite an easy thing to put together because of his mad photo organising skills. So Dad's last week through in the Cairns Hospital fighting multiple infections. He had 2 infections. One they had no idea what it was, and it was a blood-based one, and one they knew what that was, and then there was other issues with his blood, and then there was pneumonia on top of it. So we kind of got the word. I'd been up there for my birthday a little bit before it, and then we flipped up. Matt and Tess came, and I said I'm staying, and Matt stayed as much as he could. He was there pretty much most of the time, and Tess and their wonderful boys were there. We kept that room humming with activity and fun. Poor Dad, I don't think he got a minute's rest, but we weren't going to let him die without some energy. So it was just marvellous. I'm in that shirt because on Fridays up in that part of the world everyone wears a tropical shirt, and so I fell in with that sort of a crowd. Dad had his favourite, he had one with Hawaiian shirt with Mickey and Minnie Mouse on it, and he was in and out of that shirt as often as he possibly could. It was fabulous. They were an amazing couple of weeks. He was very, very together. We talked a hell of a lot. I couldn't believe how funny, what he was facing, how much fun he was, and full of references and jokes, and the poor nurses and the doctors, he had them spinning because they all expect misery and end of life and all this kind of stuff, and he just, that was there, but there was also so much brightness. It was incredible. One little point to illustrate as I'm coming to a close here. While he was very weak, he was super sharp and hilarious at times. I almost put on that order of service a quote from him, "Surely you can't be serious." Because he loved flying high, he loved the Marx Brothers, and he just kept quoting it the whole time. It's the only thing I think he had in his head at the end was that. So during the last weeks, my beautiful brother asked Dad, "Dad, is there anything you're afraid of?" And he looked at Matt and said, "Yep, the last thing I want to see, the thing I'm most afraid of is the last thing I'm going to see is that friggin' poster on the wall." He actually said that. And so you can see it's the end of the bed. And the idea is you're meant to have a whiteboard marker and you're meant to write questions for the doctor, stories and whatever stuff. But what they've done, I've just screwed up a nice picture. They've put this big opaque panel on top of it, and he hated it. So it was a very serious moment. My ear pricked up when Matthew said that. I thought that's a really brave thing to ask a dying person. What are you afraid of? Thinking, oh my God, the boogeyman, the devil, whatever it might be. What is he going to be afraid of? Yeah, the last thing I was thinking that place. So the three of us, Tess, Matt, and I, hustled onto the laptop. Didn't tell him. We made him a surprise. We made him this picture on the right and stuck it up. And just as testament to his network, one of our customers was working at the Photocode Camera House in Cairns Central Plaza, a 2-minute walk from their front door, who printed that in 2 hours. We rushed it back and hung it back up. And you know what? The print was bloody lovely print. I was so impressed by it. And when he saw it up there, he just couldn't help but point it out, tell everybody all about it. So you can see, there's his room, there's his view. Oh my God, who gets to live in a place like that and go in a place like that? It's just incredible. So that's Cairns Harbour out that way. You're looking to the Coral Sea. He could see the planes land at the airport. He could see Matthew come and go. You could see the tide come in and out. It was just incredible. So he passed away on July 29th at 11:15 a.m. He was attended to by a wonderful team of haematologists, palliative care specialists and nurses, and they were incredible. They were incredible. The only thing that went wrong, perhaps, was that he was not in a palliative care unit and everyone wanted to keep him alive. They weren't paying attention. So at every chance he was looking low, there was rushing in and helping him out and everything, so he kept doing this poor little bump along. But it was a beautiful thing to see and be a part of. It really was incredible. And the doctors and the team up there are just remarkable. I can't speak highly enough of his experience and time up there. It was just incredible. So we spent 2.5 weeks with him, and then I spent a half week with Mum afterwards. So, well, this is our successful businessman that a lot of us know. I think this is our dad. So,
Look out the window.
That's it. Thank you.
Hospital as a child. They were providing support to my parents and my family, and they would take me out on walks where I would have all the little machines in hospital attached to myself, taking me on little strolls through the corridors of the hospital, just entertaining me and giving my parents that wonderfully needed break from some stressful times in their life. They were always there to support my parents at the beginning, and I'm really grateful for that. Throughout primary school, and as we were older and my family started to grow, we would always go visit the grandparents up in Adelaide in the lab. We loved going to Adelaide. I think my siblings' favourite part would be Foxtel television that they had in their room, because we didn't have Foxtel at home, and we thought it was the coolest thing ever. We'd stay up late watching Nickelodeon, ABC3, and all the kids' channels just to enjoy ourselves, and also see our lovely cousins Elizabeth, Josephine, Kate, and Paul, which hiding over there. It was lovely being able to visit them throughout life, and every time we'd visit to Adelaide, we'd go down for a lovely stroll down Brumby Park through the beautiful trees that they had, and often go on the paddle boats. Some great photos of us sitting together on the paddle boats, and John really just being there, being lively, and always being quite fun and enjoyable to be around. Towards his later stages of life, obviously when they moved up to Cairns, I thought, this is a win, free holiday to Cairns. Unfortunately, that free holiday to Cairns turned into, hey, your grandfather's got leukemia, and he's gonna potentially not live too soon. There was multiple dates given for how long John was going to live, and Dr. Shearer, the hematologist, said to John, don't have this much long left, and John ended up outliving his hematologist. So my simple advice to you is do not be a doctor for the Atkins, because we have a track record of outliving our doctors. It's beautiful visiting them up in Cairns. We would go up, see them in this beautiful tropical place. We went on all these amazing trips. For my 18th, I got to share it with them on a cruise, where we went for just a sunset cruise, and it was absolutely lovely. We obviously just went as a family, and John and Marilyn, as they are, always finding to make new friends wherever they go. They made some lovely friends on the cruise, had some great conversations, and it was a beautiful night. Marilyn and John really got integrated into their community in Cairns. Marilyn knows the people at the newsagents, he made friends with everybody in the hospital, and they really loved living there and made a network and made another family from themselves in Cairns, even with the short time that they had. I was absolutely amazed to see how independent and how strong they were through everything, especially towards their end of life care. Because you'd expect or think for them to be stressed or worried, but they just kept powering forward. John always would have a smile and a laugh, would always make a bit of a cheeky joke, and it was just amazing. Towards the final part of his life, where we were told he was in hospital with infections, we flew up as a family to go and see John, to spend some of the time with him in his final moments. And even when we got there, we were expecting potentially to see the worst, and we weren't sure what we were going to walk into. He was lively, having conversations with us, still having a laugh, and really being strong, proud and powerful to all of us. It was really quite inspirational, and it was amazing to see him. I had to actually fly down a little bit early, so I was feeling a little bit nervous and a little bit ashamed, like I wanted to be there longer for him. And I went and basically said that to him on my final night. And John came up, I went up to John and told him that. And John responded to me that, that's okay, William, you need to chase your dreams. He told me that it's important to not lose focus on your life and to keep moving forward. Because even though if he's not going to be around in person, we can still use his traits and attributes to ourselves to help guide us and basically make us into the people that we are. He's definitely inspired me as my grandfather, and I know that my siblings loved him, and I know that B and Joe loved him, Paul and Kate loved him, and everybody else in this room obviously loves him enough to come out on a Monday and spend some time with him. So thank you everybody for coming, and thank you so much for showing me how lovely of a man my grandfather is.
Okay, thank you, William. What a wonderful young man. Must be proud parents over there, Matt and Tess. So, look, I just want to say a few things from my point of view. In the late 70s, I was an up-and-coming photographer. I used to shoot weddings for John Plug and Alex Heruc, and do a few jobs, portraits for myself on the weekend. I had a normal day job, and I was hoping to get into the photography area, and I wasn't having much success. And then John Atkins changed my life. I was in the lab one day, and he said, "Hey Norm, you want to start a studio together?" I thought there was a sign from above came down. I mean, how would you like that offer from the leading laboratory in this state, offering you the opportunity to start a studio? So I thought about it for 2 seconds and said, "Yep, I'm in." So we started Gainsborough Studio in 1980. I had photography experience, he had business experience and contacts, and yeah, it changed my life. And 42 years later, we're Gainsborough Studios going strong. Leading studio in Adelaide, folks. Come for your family portrait. Most of the other photographers who were around at that stage are not here anymore. But, John said to me, "They only count the winners at the finish. So keep going." So, don't know if you've ever done that exercise. Who are the top 5 people you've ever known in your life? I did the exercise, and my wife was the first, of course. Better get that in. And, but John Atkins was in the top 5 people I've ever known in my life, and I've met thousands of people. I've photographed prime ministers, presidents, all kinds of famous celebrities from all over the world, and when I think about John, he was such a man of integrity. If he said he was going to do something, he'd do it. You know, he was loyal, dependable, diligent, honest. He was just a great guy. So, sorry, I feel as though a part of me has been taken away, and that's just my personal feeling. So, we had many fun times together. Maybe just one little snippet I should relate is John had a Rolls Royce. John wasn't an extrovert or a loud person, and I tend to be a little bit that way. And John was a Holden man, and every 3 years he used to get a new Holden. And the time was coming up, and I said, "John, why don't you get a Rolls Royce? You know, because you're a big deal businessman and highly respected." He goes, "Oh no, yeah, it's not right, you know. A working class guy like me with a Rolls Royce." So anyway, I found this Rolls Royce for him. He's going to spend 35 grand on a Holden, and this Rolls Royce Silver Cloud from the 70s was 30 grand. So we went in, we looked at it and said, "Yeah." So we bought this Rolls Royce, and we had a lot of fun in it. I think Marilyn liked it more than he did. He was a little bit nervous driving it. We went to the town hall for a function, parked it right outside. Bang. Fantastic. Went to the Hyatt for a function. They ran, the concierge runs around, parked it in the #1 spot. Went to $30,000 car, but just a Rolls Royce had an effect on people. And yeah, John loved that. And he parked it across the road in the car park. And I said, "Look, somebody's going to ding the door." He said, "It's just a car." That's life, yeah? He was so kind of malleable. He went with the flow, and when stuff happened, he just said, "Yeah, that's life, that's it. It'll be cool, carry on." So, yeah, he was one of my best friends, and I miss him. Anyway, thanks for listening. Now look, I'm sure there's a few people who want to come up and say a few words of their memories. I know Alex does. Alex, would you like to come forward now, please? And yeah, I'll have a think. Just give me a little indication. Who'd like to come and say a few words? Just pop your hand.
We're just going to put a microphone in front of them.
Yep.
There you go.
Anybody like to come forward? Pete?
It's my wallet's in that pocket.
Talking about wallets, there are very, very few people who I would say, "Here's my wallet, mind that." But John was one of them. He was just that guy. Anyway.
Okay, that's enough.
As you can see, Norm is not a man of few words.
The reason why this lady is up here because there's always been. She's probably going to hold the hanky for me. But it's always been John and Marilyn and Alex and I. We started a photographic studio. Well, not started, but we we ran a photographic studio 45 years ago called Family Tree Photographers, and John was our choice of laboratories. We also, by the way, had a really good photographer called Weedall, who John came up and pinched to form Gainsborough Studios. Now, all testament to John. This is how much, after all this time, regardless of the fact that he took my top photographer, they're not listening, he still remained a friend of ours for 45 years. He was totally honest. I could tell him anything about the business, he wouldn't relay it to him, and vice versa. As much as I tried to get him, as much as I could out of him.
I asked him. I kept asking him. He wouldn't tell me.
Yeah, look, it's time catches up to all of us. It's amazing standing here listening to what has gone on in John's life. We've been a big part of it. Same with Peter and Tracy at the back there. We went on a lot of trips together. Camping was very interesting with Paul. The trip on Lake Alexandrina was interesting because he took us out on this lake. It was freezing cold, and John said, "Look, it's cold and we can't see the other end of the shore." And we were on this boat for about 2 or 3 hours. So he decided to have a bottle of port, and we wound up having 2 bottles of port. The trip went very well after that. We wound up afterwards at a campsite, had some more to drink. We found how good Paul's culinary skills were. He chopped up a lot of veggies and meat, stuck them in a camp oven. And of course, if you know about camp ovens, you bury them, put coals at the bottom of the hole, and put the camp oven on top and cover it. Of course, by the time we sat down and had a few more drinks, the sun had gone down. We couldn't find the oven. We eventually did. We went to several houseboat trips with John and Marilyn, and Peter and Tracy. They were very interesting. He was always the captain of the boat. Oh, I must also remember that Paul mentioned about John's piloting and Matt's piloting. He conned me into taking a trip to Broken Hill with Matt flying. We got there fine. It was a lovely trip. Mind you, it was just boring. It's in this thumping little plane with a racket going behind you, the motors in the front. Coming back, I'm sitting in the back of the plane, and the two, Matt was piloting and John was co-piloting. They were talking to each other, and I don't know what they were saying, but they looked kind of concerned. We landed, and I said to Paul, "What's going on?" Well, sorry, to John. I said, "What was going on in the front?" And John said, "Oh, nothing much. Just Matt had lost his altimeter, which tells you how high you are off the ground." So he landed the plane by himself. Oh, of course, with John sitting next to him. Landed the plane by himself and got us home safely. But I never flew with him again. I can understand why Marilyn never flew with him again. We went to the Gold Coast at one stage, again with Peter and Tracy and the boys, Paul and Matt, and Kate was there? Yep. And our kids. Daniel, my son, who was 6 years old then, 6, 7. John said to me during the trip there on the Gold Coast in Surfers Paradise, he said, "Oh, there's a water slide in the middle of the city. Why don't we take the boys out and we'll have some fun on this water slide?" So we got to the water slide, and my son looked at the 6, looked at it and said, "No, Dad, I don't want to go on that." So I said, "All right, I'll stay down here with you." Paul, Matt, and John drilled off upstairs to, it was one of those really big whizzing things that came down and you wound up in the water. I'm standing at the bottom, and I can see Paul and Matt and John. Paul and Matt came down, then John came down, and this is when I found out the real measure of this man. He'd actually come down and he'd lost his bathers. I'm standing out there on the edge of the pool with a beach towel. John's in the water. You don't know how difficult it was to give him that towel. John, we had so many good times together. I could go on for hours with this, but I'm sure somebody else wants to talk. He's gone. We both loved him very dearly. He's gone, but he's not gone. He's always in here. He will be until we're both gone. And Marilyn, we love you too, and we'll hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex and Diane Heruc. Would anybody else like to come and say a few words? Yep, no? Okay. Look, take the advantage of the next hour or so and chat to the people you haven't seen for a long time, and the food will be coming out in about 1 minute, I believe. So thank you everybody for coming along today to talk about John. Yeah, that's it. Anything else?
Thank you, Norman.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Paul, where are Tracy and Peter?
They're at the bar on the corner, right on the corner.
Right on the corner, okay.
Yep.
You guys okay?
Oh, thank you. I might get a video of the food. Because this is the type of thing that she'll want to know.
Yes, the
how
food.
the food was.
Should have done it before we attacked it.
Mum, stay.